Tem um momento na carreira que precisamos dar um passo além. É hora de fazer uma pós-graduação. Só que muitas vezes o custo pesa no bolso, inviabilizando tudo. Com a pós-graduação do Senac, você não tem esse problema. Cursos com até 50% de desconto e muito mais tempo para pagar. TCC opcional, modelo flexível com aulas presenciais e online e alguns cursos com apenas 12 meses de duração. Não tem mais desculpa, hein? Saiba mais em sp.senac.br/pós-graduação.
All right. Back to the Misfit Nation. Last week we ended with a chat about beer, and it was glorious. This week I'm going to pair that with a foodie. We all have watched at least one show on the Food Network and tried to channel our inner chef in the kitchen while trying to remember every step we saw on the show. We do this not because we want to be the person on the television, but rather because we want to eat something good. We do have favorite shows and hosts. One of the most famous ones is Guy Fieri, and his numerous shows on TV. We here at the Misfit Nation have been binging Triple G or Guy's Grocery Games throughout the last year plus. I've attained some good recipes through that crazy show. The show that got him started, though, was Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, where you would see Guy pull up to a local spot in any town USA in his red Camaro and try their cuisine while giving them some free advertisement on the network. That drive has shown us tons of different foods across this country. And leads us to the questions. What is American food? Is it fast food? Is it upscale? Is it culturally dependent? Our next guest is well versed in this area and will lead us in the right direction to answer this question. So without further ado, let's get David Page, creator of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, and author of Food Americana, on here. All right, welcome to the show, David Page, producer. How you doing, David?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
So why don't you tell some of the listeners of the Misfit Nation a little bit about you, your story, how you got into producing, and your biggest hits.
Okay. I wanted to be in broadcasting from the time I was a young kid, and was in the car with my parents and my younger sister, driving from Long Island to the Bronx to see my grandmother and grandfather, and WNEW radio was on. The disc jockey was William B. Williams, and I popped up from the back of the car. I want to do that when I grow up, and my father said, "No, you don't. That's not a good way to earn a living." Despite that, I never lost interest, and at the age of 15, got my first radio job. Obviously, I had to be driven to and from the weekend shifts at the little local radio station by my parents. Then, as I got older, I literally followed jobs around the country, often leaving college in the lurch as an opportunity became available. I ended up in radio full-time in Wichita, Kansas, and then got into TV there. Specialized pretty quickly in investigative reporting, which I did in Phoenix, Houston, and Atlanta, and was then picked up by NBC News to be a producer for them out of the Chicago bureau. After a couple of years there, they were based first in London, then Frankfurt, then Budapest. I covered events in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, culminating in playing a pivotal role in our coverage of the fall of communism throughout Europe. I actually walked through the Berlin Wall into East Berlin on the night that all opened up. Came back to the States and became a show producer. Co-created the weekend editions of the Today Show. Went to ABC as senior investigative producer of 2020. Then I moved over to Good Morning America as what was called line producer, one of three people who, for a week at a time in rotation, would run the show, subject to sign off by the executive producer. When I left network television, I set up my own production company and began pitching programming, and eventually managed to sell a show to the Food Network, Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. Did that for 11 seasons, then moved on to syndicating a show about beer called Beer Geeks. And my latest project is a book that has just been released called Food Americana, about the way we created and continue to create a uniquely American cuisine out of the foods of other countries and cultures.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, I love food and I love beer, so it's just two good things right there. And I was a big fan of diners, dives, and drive-ins and dives early on, and that's me and my wife. When we travel places, we'd always go to places that the show actually hit, especially here in Nashville. There's a few stores down there I went to, so we went to them. What gave you the idea for that show?
Desperation not to go broke.
Oh, that's a good idea.
When I first opened a production company, all that really means, until you get a project, is you're calling yourself a production company, and you have, back in those days, an answering machine on your phone. I was failing at selling anything to anyone, and I called up my friend Al Roker, who had actually worked for me on the weekend editions of the Today Show, and he had earlier formed his own production company. I said, "Hey, I'm starving. You got any work?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm doing a fair amount of stuff for the Food Network. You want to do some?" I said, "Sure." So I started doing projects for the network through him. Eventually, I moved on to attempting to get my own projects with the network, and that didn't go so well. Repeatedly, I would call up and pitch something, and they would pass. One time, finally, I'm on the phone, unsuccessfully pitching a development executive who remembered that for Al's company, I had done a history of diners. And she said to me, "Don't you have anything else about diners?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely. I'm developing this show called Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives." And this was late on a Thursday or Friday. And she said, "That sounds interesting. We have a meeting on Tuesday. Get me a write-up, a proposal for the show on Monday." So I hang up the phone and I say to myself, this is both great and awful, because I did not, in fact, have a show called Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives in development. I had literally made the name up, pulled it out of thin air, or perhaps a body part, however scatological you want the story to be. I spent the weekend calling around the country, because that was back in the day when you actually made phone calls. You didn't just email people. And it's still a better repertorial technique to talk to folks. Anyway, called around the country, and by Monday, I submitted to her one sheet. Well, it was more than one sheet, but that's the term for a pitch. And shortly thereafter, to my surprise, they picked it up as a special, a one-time event that would, in their minds, help keep Guy Fieri's face in public view. He had just won their Food Network Star Contest, while they waited for two big deal production companies to submit proposals for a Guy Fieri primetime show. The special did quite well, perhaps better than they had expected. And the proposals from the big time production companies were not to their liking. So all of a sudden, they're in this bizarre situation where they have a guy they want to make a star out of. The only thing they have for him to do is something that I've done. I'm not a big time production company, but they went ahead and rolled the dice and picked up a short first season of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. It did very well, obviously. I stayed with the show for the first 11 seasons. I think it's now into season 30-something.
Yeah, they pump them out now.
Well, we pumped him out then, too.
Yeah, I think Guy has like 4 or 5 different shows going at the same time. I get confused a lot, but they're always there.
He's a remarkable talent.
I think his personality is pretty good too, and he gets the the audience and those who were on the stage with him going. So it's pretty good.
Well, my definition of successful TV is voyeurism. It's hanging out with someone you want to hang out with. If you take a look at any genre of TV, I mean, there's a reason Tom Selleck keeps starring in TV shows, because people like him. That's what it's about.
Yes, and he's obviously been around a while now, so that's awesome. So let's transition, I guess, to your book now. You said Food Americana.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
So, it is my analysis, exploration, if you will, of how we built a cuisine. Because pretty much everything we now take for granted as American food started someplace else. As much as there is ongoing debate over immigration to this country, people sure love foods from other cultures and countries that end up here. Everything from Mexican to chicken wings to burgers to ice cream, it all has roots elsewhere. Even sushi. At this point, sushi, in my view, is an American food. The chief marketing executive at the company that produces the most prepackaged sushi in America explained to me that when she was younger, let's say in high school, she and her friends would run out and grab hamburgers. Today, her kids run out and grab sushi. And sushi is a perfect example. Once we develop a fondness for a food, or even to develop that fondness, we or restaurant owners change it. We react to what the American palate seems to want or what it can stand. I mean, many Americans are put off at the thought of eating raw fish in the sushi. So we've gone ahead and invented all kinds of sushi rolls that have nothing to do with raw fish and are supersized, which is what America likes to do to its food, and doused with a variety of sauces. Now, by the way, that's not the way sushi is eaten in Japan. It's Americanized sushi and perfectly valid as a new cuisine of its own. All foods evolve depending upon where they are.
Right. And I remember I was going to school in New York for my first year of college. My brother had just got out of the Navy, stationed in Japan, and he asked me to pick him up sushi on the way home from school in New York. And I had no idea what I was looking for, no idea what I was supposed to get. And I found this little place on Fifth Avenue. I walked in there and I just pointed at stuff because I had no idea what it was. And I brought it to him and said, yeah, this is it. This is almost like Japan. And that was, 1988. So.
Well, there has been excellent sushi in New York for a very long time. One of the first Hollywood stars to begin to make sushi popular was Yul Brynner, famous for The King and I. And his daughter explained to me her mother and Yul Brynner had been divorced. He was in Hollywood, she was in New York, and whenever he came east to see her, he would take her out for sushi. He loved it.
Nice. What other foods do you think have evolved the most once they hit America?
Well, you lived in New York. How about
Yep.
bagels and lox?
Yes.
The bagel came to America as smaller and crisper than it evolved in New York. Lox, while Jews in Eastern and Central Europe ate smoked fish, they didn't eat lox because they didn't have lox. I mean, no one had lox until the Transcontinental Railroad was completed, and it became possible to ship salmon from Seattle to New York. But there was no refrigeration technology, so to keep it from spoiling, they packed it in tons of salt. It arrived in New York as a very salty, brined fish, and that's the definition of lox. Now, lox, bagels, and cream cheese had never been eaten outside of New York at that point, but it was a marriage made in heaven.
Right. Definitely. And I think if you just cross the border into Mexico and eat actual food down there, then come across and see what we call the same thing, it's night and day.
Understand something. Mexico, like most countries, does not have a unified cuisine. It has regional cuisines based on what grew or was raised in a particular area. Mexican American food evolved from the food of the northern region of Mexico when the people who lived there suddenly found themselves no longer Mexican, but American. What happened is, in 1848, the Mexican-American War ended, and the United States seized half of Mexico, everything north of the Rio Grande. Suddenly, these norteños, residents of northern Mexico, found themselves cut off from some supply of Mexican foods, and also, over time, found themselves trying to operate restaurants that would be of interest to non-Mexicans. What that meant was certain ingredients had to be replaced, yellow cheese for white, for example, but far more significantly, the spice level had to come way down. And over time, every cuisine evolves. So what had been Norteño Mexican cuisine evolved to include a variety of different dishes that may not have existed in Mexico proper over time. But you got the chimichanga, which is a deep fried burrito. You got the mission burrito, which is massively overstuffed. You got the enchiladas that were just covered in a chili sauce, far more than they had been in Mexico. And again, we added new twists as time went on, as happens to all cuisines. However, what's very interesting with Mexican cuisine right now is different regions of Mexico are suddenly represented when you go looking for Mexican food, based on increased immigration from other areas. One example would be mole, which is a sauce that back in the, 1600s was traditionally served on turkey, which at the time was a key food in the Mexican diet. Now it's served generally on chicken, but it's a spicy sauce based on chilies, often with the addition of Mexican chocolate, often with other fruits or nuts. Mole has become much easier to find in the United States over the past few years. And at the moment, the hot Mexican dish, hot in terms of popular, is something called birria de res, which is a spicy beef stew served in a taco that's been grilled and dipped by whoever's eating into a cup of the cooking sauce, which is then called consomme. Now, birria began as goat in central Mexico. Over time, it migrated to Tijuana, where it appears the idea of serving it as beef in a taco was born. And from there, it crossed the border into LA. And a few years ago, it completed a trek across the United States, and it is currently extraordinarily popular on the East Coast. I live an hour and a half from Philly, and I'll get in the car with my wife and go down there to a particular taco truck in South Philly just to have birria de res.
Wow. That's a good ride and a good city to go to. So it's not
damn
bad.
Straight. Yeah. They have more than cheesesteaks down
there. Definitely more. I always find little like corner restaurants there, mom and pop restaurants I love to go to there when I take family there and stuff like that.
Well, the undercurrent of my book is a plea for people to eat at mom and pop restaurants where the food is made from scratch it's real and it's good.
And it's not overproduced like all your mega stores.
Well, look, we've become to a great extent. I just about cry when I drive into any new town, and inevitably find myself going down the commercial road that is flanked by chain restaurants. Applebee's claiming to be your local bar. You know what? There are such things as local bars. These are places that are defrosters. They basically take commissary prepared food and put it in a microwave. And we shouldn't be eating that way.
And even here, small town USA, Clarksville, Tennessee, you get off the highway, and that's exactly what you see. Both sides of the road just lined for, I want to say 3 miles straight once you get off the highway of big name fast foods.
Well, where in Tennessee are you? Which end of the state are you closest to?
I'm just west of Nashville.
Oh, well, I did a bunch in the book about Nashville hot chicken.
Oh, nice.
Which is now being stolen by fast food operations. Why would you ever do that?
Right. They've killed it. It doesn't taste anything like the originals.
Well, when you do fast food for a wide swath of audience, you have to make it least objectionable. And let's face it, Nashville hot chicken done right will blow your brains out.
Yes. Not just your brains.
Yeah.
It'll hurt you later.
It'll hurt you. Yeah, it'll hurt you any way you want. But no, we cover Prince's hot chicken extensively.
Nice.
And in the book, I quote a number of patrons who have just eaten there. And man, it carries the heat. But they say it's also the flavor. It's not just heat, but there's something real special to it.
Definitely. And we have one right here in Clarksville. Well, actually, it's on the Kentucky side of the border in Oak Grove called JP's Hot Chicken. It's in a gas station, and they have levels of heat, and one you have to sign a waiver for. I watched a man. They were doing construction on a casino over there, and he was a big, tough, burly guy. Went in there in the middle of winter. He was freezing outside. He ate one bite, and I can see the steam come off the top of his head immediately.
Yeah, that's
pouring down.
I don't do that. When I went to for the Chinese food chapter, I was taken by a couple of Chinese college students to a huge mall in Flushing, Queens, that catered to a Chinese clientele. So this was food as you really get it today in China, including a dish called dry pot, which you put together kind of like you're at Chipotle. You pick the things you want, and then they're cooked together with spices. I got a bowl of it, and it was fantastic, but my face nearly melted off. And only later did one of the students admit to me that was a heat level after she had asked them to make sure to give me milder heat. So God knows what the original would have been.
Wow. That would have hurt bad if you went with the big one, I guess.
Yeah, but it was great. And it was a perfect example of, you talk about the difference between food as in its mother country and how it has been modified over time here. Much of what was available for my dry pot were grammatically challenged here. Items that I would suspect most Americans would not choose, like artery and duck blood and tendon, because a key part of Chinese cuisine is not just varied tastes, but varied textures. And another part of the evolution of Chinese cuisine was you don't waste food. If it's on the animal, you eat it. And I got to tell you, it was great. And to the extent that it's possible, I'd love people to be a little more open-minded about trying some stuff.
Oh, definitely. I've been having that argument with my wife for 27 years now, trying to get her to open up to anything other than pizza and spaghetti. So.
Well, allow me to give you some marriage advice. I've been married a year or two longer than you. Don't argue with your wife. Just say yes.
I say yes a lot, but I also cook dinner every night, so she has to eat what I make. I win sometimes. I'll never say I win a lot, but I win sometimes.
Well, I guess that's good.
Yeah. And we went to Korea for 2 years when I was still in the Army. We lived there, so she had to go outside of her comfort zone there in Korea. Because you have no other.
Well, no, not completely. I mean, there are many Korean dishes like bulgogi that are extremely America friendly.
Yes. You just got to watch which restaurant you go to.
Okay. Did you become a kimchi fan?
Oh, I love kimchi. I love kimchi. She did not. I love it.
Do you bury your own or do you buy it?
I buy it now. We have a Korean market right here now since we have a lot of Korean industry in our town now. So we're blessed with a lot of Korean restaurants and Korean stores now. So it's like having a little Korea here. So it's pretty cool.
That's a lovely thing. What I find interesting is individual Korean populations, I guess, don't have the mass for this, but it strikes me as unusual that there are now Asian supermarkets that cater to a broad range of different countries, each of which has a cuisine that's unique to itself, and yet they've all gotten mashed into the same grocery store.
Yes. Yes, I've seen them up on the East Coast. I've seen them down by Nashville. There's a big one. I think when I was stationed in Maryland, there was a big one up there. It was like bigger than a Walmart up there.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of chains that I know of. And by the way, we were shopping in one just a couple of weeks ago. Some of the food available there is phenomenal. Just incredible. But again, you have to be willing to try stuff.
Got to be able to open that aperture of your taste buds, and it helps, I think. I was kind of lucky to grow up in the Northeast, New Jersey, New York, so it was a diverse food culture up there. And then I went in the Army, so I had to put them on big boy pants and learn how to eat overseas in the middle of the street in like Afghanistan and Iraq to become friendly with the locals and to show I trust them and make it home. So I ate a lot of good stuff in Afghanistan. I like their food a lot.
Middle Eastern, well, Afghanistan's not Middle Eastern, but it's, I guess, technically Asian. Yeah. I never got to Afghanistan. I did do a lot of time in the Middle East, and the cuisines there are just wonderful.
Yeah, the flavor palettes are amazing in Iraq, especially. I didn't expect it. All I expected was what you see on the news: horror. But living through their food, it was pretty good.
What was interesting is long ago, before the first Gulf War, Baghdad was a vibrant city. And it was kind of like a mini Cairo. And you could drink if you signed an infidel card. And we used to go out to eat in a variety of restaurants down by the river. And the food was terrific, just terrific.
And we had to go down to their government center in Ramadi all the time. Yeah. Right at the beginning of the war. And there's a young boy out there. He'd always come up to our convoy. We get out on patrol, and then Mister, you buy sandwich. Sure. So we buy sandwiches from him. He come back all happy. We give him money, and we didn't know what to think of it the first time, and then we just kept going back to that little kid. So it was good food.
That's nice. That's a very nice story.
So have you done a tour yet with the Food Americana book, or is it kind of on hold because of the pandemic stuff?
Tours are, because of the pandemic, they've been put on hold. I'm doing a whole lot of Zoom interviews, and I'm hoping to start doing some promotional travel in the near future. I mean, you think writing's hard, try promoting. Woo.
And even promoting the podcast is hard enough.
I understand. I understand.
And when my daughter got published right out of high school, so that's when I finally got to know her again, because I just retired from the Army that year, basically a month after she graduated. And we went on the book tour, so I got to know her pretty well finally, after many years of just being that away dad. So,
that's a wonderful thing. What's the name of her book?
The Unexpected.
Wow. Did she go on to continue writing?
She went on to college to learn how to be a writer, and now she's very critical of herself as she writes. So her next book is taking a little longer, but I think it's going to be a phenomenal one when it comes out.
Yeah, no, my daughter is just finishing up her MFA in poetry at Columbia, and no one is tougher on her work than she is. But that level of perfectionism is necessary.
Yes. And I asked her to do my cover art for a show, and it took her nearly a month to come up with a concept because she kept ripping up papers.
But it was good, right?
Yeah, I loved it. I just need to get it digitalized now. So.
Oh, well, there's that.
Yeah. She did a great job. It's just that everything has to be so perfect. It went to the E-tray all the time. So.
Gotcha.
So if someone wants to get in touch with you, I found your old website. I'm not sure if you still use that.
No, what I'm doing now is I have a Facebook account for the book.
Okay.
It's under Food Americana. And I have an Instagram account under Food Americana. And I would be glad to exchange texts or messages or anything with anyone.
Awesome.
I would also ask them to go buy the book.
Definitely. I'm going to actually contact my sister-in-law. She's a manager at Barnes & Noble after this to see how they're doing at her store and get me one.
I'd love to know.
She's right there. She's still up in New Jersey. So
where?
I think she's at the Clifton store now.
Well, I used to live in Glen Ridge, right by Clifton.
Nice.
That's the one in the massive mall, right?
Right, like the outdoor mall area there.
Yeah, they built that mall while we were living there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. They all live in Bloomfield, which is also right next to Glen Ridge. So.
Where I had the best butcher on earth. I used to call him and say, hey, I want to make rack of lamb. And when I'd get there, he would pull like a whole side of a lamb out of the cooler and start whacking away.
Nice.
Oh, it's perfect. Just perfect.
Yeah, we don't get that down here unless you kill a deer. So.
Well, yeah, but then you got to whack away at it yourself, I think.
Yeah.
Although, wait, I lived in Minnesota, and there used to be places that advertised that they did deer processing, it was called.
Yeah.
Yeah. You drop off the carcass, and they come back at you with steaks, chops, and
sausages.
Yeah.
Well, David, it's great finally getting together and getting you on here. Can't wait to read the book and see where you go to next. I'd love to have you on again. If you want to get on again after you get going with the book again,
I'd love to.
We'll plug you again and get this going. Is there any advice you'd want to give to any of the listeners on how to follow their dream as being an author or a producer?
Just do it. I hate to emphasize Nike, but when people are telling you you'll never get an agent, you'll never get a publisher, if you believe in the book, just write it.
Outstanding. That's great advice. Well, I'll let you get back to your day, David. Thanks a lot, and I look forward to hearing from you.
That was great chatting with Dave about food and how it evolves when it crosses our borders, or any border for that matter. So get out there and grab a copy of his book, Food Americana, whichever way you like to read it, digitally or in your hand, to help you find the rest of the story on how food becomes American. So you know how we do this. Thanks for taking some of your time to spend with us on the Misfit Nation. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and share the link as much as possible. If you want to, please become a supporter to help carry this on. We appreciate you. And as always, till next time, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling,
because we are the Misfit Nation.